We live our lives obsessed with a metal that symbolizes power, divinity, and eternal wealth. We have fought wars for it, enslaved civilizations to mine it, and built our entire global economy upon its perceived rarity. Gold. To us, it is the ultimate prize, but to the Earth, gold is a heavy primordial secret buried nearly 3,000 kilometers beneath our feet. We have always assumed that the Earth's core was a locked vault, a silent metallic tomb isolated from the world we inhabit. We were wrong. The vault is leaking. What if the very thing we desire most becomes the catalyst for our extinction? What if the Midas touch isn't a myth of wealth, but a geological death sentence? Deep within the interior of the planet, the barrier between the molten core and the mantle is failing. The golden blood of the Earth is rising, and it is bringing a catastrophic heat that our civilization is not prepared to survive. Today, we examine the chilling scientific evidence of a planet that is slowly exhaling its metallic heart. This is not a story of a treasure hunt. This is a report on a global breach. Welcome to Discovered. To understand the magnitude of this threat, we must first look at the recent unsettling revelations from the University of Göttingen. In a study that sent shockwaves through the scientific community and was published in the journal Nature, researchers analyzed volcanic rocks from the island of Hawaii. They weren't looking for gold, but for something far more revealing, an extremely rare metal called ruthenium. The Earth is structured in layers, and for billions of years, we believed the metallic core was a grumpy hermit, totally sealed off from the silicate mantle and the thin crust where we reside. But this discovery confirms the existence of massive plumes of magma-malignant conduits that rise from the core-mantle boundary like an extremely hot high-pressure elevator. These plumes are the geological tips of an epic metal-melting iceberg. Every volcanic eruption in places like Hawaii or the Reunion Island is not just a show of fire, it is a leak from the abyss. And where there is ruthenium, there is gold. The statistics are staggering. Scientists estimate that 99.9% of all the gold on this planet is trapped in the core. If you were to bring all that gold to the surface, you could cover the entire landmass of the Earth in a layer of pure gold knee-deep. We have spent our entire history scratching at the surface, fighting over the 0.1% that was deposited by asteroid impacts billions of years ago. But now, the Earth itself is beginning to vomit up the true Horde. And this is where the greed of man meets the cold reality of physics. Imagine a scenario where this core mantle leakage accelerates. We often think of volcanic eruptions as events involving ash and liquid stone. But if a plume becomes saturated with heavy metals from the core, the nature of the eruption changes. We would see the opening of terrestrial chasms from which stones laced with concentrated gold are ejected at supersonic speeds. But this would not be a gift. It would be a nightmare of heavy metal toxicity and thermal devastation. Gold has a melting point of 1064 degrees Celsius, but the material rising from the core is far hotter, exceeding 3000 degrees. If gold-rich plumes were to breach the crust in a sudden violent surge, the resulting golden rain would be a lethal aerosol of vaporized heavy metals. As these metals cooled in the atmosphere, they would fall as microscopic, jagged needles of gold, silver, and lead. It would not be a rain of wealth, it would be a rain of poison. Every breath taken in the vicinity of such a breach would shred the lungs of any living creature. The soil would become saturated with core-depth toxins, rendering agriculture impossible and turning our water tables into liquid lead. The psychological impact of such an event would be our immediate downfall. Human history has proven that greed is more powerful than the instinct for self-preservation. At the first report of gold eruptions, we would see a global migration toward the disaster zones. We would witness thousands, perhaps millions, of people charging into active volcanic regions, ignoring the lethal sulfur dioxide and the searing heat, desperate to claim a piece of the core's heart. It would be a massacre fueled by the very currency we spent 5,000 years worshipping. The collapse of the global economy would follow within days. If gold is no longer rare, if it is raining from the sky in the middle of a catastrophe, the foundation of every bank and every treasury on Earth vanishes. We would be left in a world where the only thing of value is the one thing we destroyed, safety. But the geological consequences are even more terrifying. The transport of heavy metals from the core to the surface requires a massive displacement of energy. If the core begins to leak its mass upward, it suggests a destabilization of the core-mantle boundary itself. This boundary is what drives the Earth's magnetic field, our only shield against lethal solar radiation. If the flow of core material becomes chaotic or accelerates, we risk a magnetic excursion or a total collapse of the magnetosphere. While we are distracted by the gold at our feet, the sun would be stripping away our atmosphere. We would be trading our air for a metal we cannot eat, cannot breathe, and cannot use to buy our way out of extinction. History gives us grim reminders of what happens when we meddle with heavy metals. In the 1950s, the Minamata disaster in Japan showed us how a single heavy metal mercury could devastate a population, causing neurological collapse and horrific birth defects. Now, imagine that on a planetary scale. A core leakage event would release not just gold, but the entire periodic table of heavy metals in their most primordial isotopic forms. We would be living in a forensic crime scene where the Earth is the murderer. The discovery of ruthenium-100 in Hawaii is a whisper from the center of the Earth. It is the planet telling us that the vault is no longer secure. We have lived in a brief window of geological silence, a time when the core stayed in its place and the mantle stayed in theirs. But that silence has been broken. The heat is rising. The heavy elements of the abyss are on the move. Every volcanic tremor, every new fissure in the crust, is a message from a depth we cannot comprehend. We are like ants crawling on the lid of a pressure cooker, admiring the golden steam escaping through the cracks, unaware that the lid is about to blow. The Earth does not care about our jewelry or our gold bars. To the planet, this is simply a matter of thermal equilibrium, a violent rebalancing of mass and heat that will eventually scrub the surface clean of the biological anomaly known as humanity. We have spent our existence mining the Earth, but now the Earth is beginning to mine us. This discovery is not a curiosity, it is a warning. The ground beneath you is not a solid floor. It is a thin, fragile membrane stretched over a sea of molten metal that is seeking a way out. The abyss is no longer a distant concept, it is rising through the plumes of our most beautiful islands. It is in the rocks of Hawaii, and it is in the tremors of the seafloor. We are witnessing the beginning of a geological exhale that could last for 1,000,000 years, a time when the Earth reclaims its surface with fire and gold. Sleep well, knowing that the floor is thinner than you think. The very wealth you covet is the poison that will eventually settle in your lungs. The Earth is a dynamic, evolving system, and we are merely a footnote in its violent history. The end is not coming from the stars. It is rising from the core. The end is beneath you, if you are prepared to face the truths that the world chooses to ignore. Stay with us. There are many more anomalies waiting to be unburied, and many more secrets the Earth is beginning to reveal. Subscribe to Discovered and activate the notification bell. In a world of comfortable lies and scientific denial, we provide the cold, clinical evidence of reality. Do not miss our next investigation, where we will dive deeper into the fractures of our failing world. See you in the next investigation.